Hey, what's good, people? It's Low Heat, and welcome to episode 3 of the Beats and Gear podcast. As always, I'm joined by my friend Mehdi, a dope producer from Italy who recently had a placement of his track Know Me Better, featuring singer Bluesforthehorn on the TV show NCIS Los Angeles. So this is huge news actually, and we talk a bit about this in the beginning, but the main topic of the show is Mac versus PC for music production. So for people watching on YouTube, I'd appreciate if you comment and let me know which platform you prefer and why. And so next time the Beats and Gear podcast will probably be streamed live and you'll be able to ask us questions. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do that and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode and of course all the tutorials and beat making videos I post. And so now on to the actual conversation with Mehdi. Cool, man. So first of all, let's talk about some new stuff that's going on with you. Some new stuff with your new releases and your music, and we'll just go straight to the Mac and PC topic after that. So if people are not really interested in that, they can skip to the Mac and PC topic. I just wanted to touch upon the sync placement that you got and the new release that you're going to be having. So what was the sync placement? Where did it actually go out? Where did it appear?
So yeah, hi bro. First of all, and thank you for having me back on the channel.
Always, bro. You're always welcome, you know.
So yeah, what about the scene placement? It was like the song with Bluesforthehorn, which is called "Know Me Better." Was actually played on the NCIS Los Angeles show. So it's a pretty big one, and I didn't even realize, when my manager Mark told me. Because it was pretty big, and I like, why me? So yeah, there was a big, there was basically a pretty good shot, and was a big luck, to have a placement that big, and it's on the show now. I don't know when it's gonna be released in Italy and Europe in general, because I think they need to translate the episode. But it was online last week in America, so yeah, that was cool. It was in a gym, they were playing the music and like he was playing from the gym. So yeah.
Most of my viewers are from the USA anyway.
Maybe they saw the show, right?
Yeah. I mean, the song is really dope, man. It's totally deserved, and the song is dope. You don't need some TV producer to tell you the song is dope, but it's a nice recognition and financial gain and stuff. So I'm really happy about it. So for those who don't know what a sync placement is, it's basically licensing your music to be played on film, television, and maybe video games. Not sure if they're
video games too.
But that's and it's like if you can get into this thing, it's really cool. So
I think it's the first place of revenue for artists, even before actually concerts and lives, and it's pretty big if you can play a song on like as a in a TV show or in a film. A film would be awesome, but yeah, it depends on what level are they are taking the songs. If you made the songs for for this video, or they just took one song that you already released. There's a lot of it's really a difficult topic. I don't know too much about that, so I cannot talk to you as I
I know
told you already. But yeah,
you told me, because I was like, let's talk about the sync placement, and you were like, I don't know, man. My manager just one day called me and said there's a sync placement, and that's what I know, right?
He always I call him all the time and try to let him explain how it works, but yeah, I give up every time. I don't understand that, and he told me it's pretty difficult, and I trust him actually on that. So I think that's the most difficult thing that you can understanding music, like how labels, um, publishing, all of that works. It's it's not that clear.
Exactly, man, and that's why it's really cool to have a manager. Maybe you can shout him out now because we're talking about him, and I think it's really
Yeah, my manager, Mark from So Europe Music, Mark Liebe, and he's actually, I don't know if I can talk about his project, but he's, he's trying to help people with, not getting screwed by labels and all of, the big three, because they usually do contracts which are really not clear for all the people. So maybe if you know a bit more about that, but yeah, maybe let's see. I don't know. It's what he will come up with and how to develop this idea, but definitely he knows a lot about this stuff. So yeah, it's
I think it would be awesome if we can get him on the podcast sometime because I think everybody who is like making music and has some, some productions ready to release would appreciate some because it's some information on these topics about publishing, licensing, dealing with labels, because that's the hardest part for an artist. And I think it's really dope to be able to just concentrate on the music and have someone else take care of this, because I mean, it's also I think it's different types of people who would be good at, getting down to the details of making music and staying all day in the studio and working. And it's another type of person who is like maybe more extroverted and more inclined to communicate with people and promote stuff. And so I think it would be, it sounds great to have a manager and to have someone take care of this.
Yeah, sure. We can shout him, and maybe next time we're gonna have him.
That will be dope, man. So when's your new release dropping?
So my new release, it's with my man Burger, with the V, and it's gonna be out on the 17th on Sidekick, which I basically released my EP with. So they seem pretty good label, so we're gonna stick with them. Good people, yeah, I recommend them. Okay. 5 stars.
Okay, man. Okay. I will link the
label.
No, what was the track called that got the sync placement with the
Know Me Better, yeah.
Know Me Better, yeah. I mean, I've listened to it so many times, but I forgot I will link it in the description so people can check it out if they haven't listened to it. But let's get down to business, man, because we've got some really controversial topic today, and it's not about clickbaiting people, and it's not about beating a dead horse, like because this topic has been discussed so many times by so many people. But Mac versus PC in terms of which is better, and I don't think it's a simple answer which is better for music production, because I think things are changing. There's constantly changing, and people have different perspectives on this, and it's a really good idea to talk about this because I've been on the Mac platform since, I don't know, for about 7 years now, and you're obviously a Windows user. Like, you've got do you have a desktop and a laptop? Like, what kind of
Yeah, exactly. Like, I have a 7 years old desktop, which is actually performing like a 4,000 euro Mac. So we're already starting with the
exactly, man.
with the punchline.
Yeah, exactly. You're already throwing the flame, man. You're already like
no, jokes apart. Yeah, I have a desktop PC which was built by me piece by piece, and yeah, obviously it's not the same PC as 7 years ago. So it's it's constantly changing. I've added the new NVMe drives, and when something comes out that can help the PC, I can just swap the component, and but still maintaining the other stuff in there. And yeah, then I have a laptop computer which I actually acquired, because the other ones was really not that helpful for music production, but it was pretty light, 13 inches, like HP computer, which is cool. Like, I the whole EP was done with that PC in London. So yeah, you can work with that. You can work with everything if you know how to, freeze tracks and get around the limitations. But
It's the high end. Is it a high end computer? Like how is the like what?
the new ones is an MSI, a Prestige 15, which is actually for me is one right now is the best decision.
So that's what you're using now?
Yeah, to to talk with you. Yeah, that's the PC. Obviously, you have some downside, like the webcam is looking like a 7 years old iPad or something. But yeah, it's it has like the main focus of the PC is like the CPUs and the RAMs and the really fast hard drive. So he has everything that you could dream for production, and that's already there. So yeah, that's what I'm using right now.
Yeah, man, exactly. I mean,
what are you using anyway?
I'm on a 15-inch MacBook Pro from 2015, and I mostly use it. Honestly, I mostly use it as a desktop computer, and so now I kind of regret a bit regret buying it, because honestly, for that type of money, maybe I could have gotten an iMac, which is a bit more powerful in terms of the graphics and in terms of the processor clock, because this one is really good with multitasking. I mean, it's like you have two computers inside. You can do open like a video editing program like Ableton and Photoshop, and to work with everything at the same time without it breaking a sweat. But if it had a more higher clock CPU, because it's 2.2 gigahertz, I think it would be. And the graphics are the built-in Intel graphics, which I don't really recommend for anyone, even for music production, because for video editing, it's fine, it's cool, it's decent. If you don't like, for the videos that I do on my channel, it works even with the built-in graphics.
You're using Final Cut, right?
Yeah, it's really optimized, so it's really. But I mean, if you pile on a lot of effects and color correction and stuff,
yeah,
it starts to sweat a bit, whatever.
But I think that's you touched a really good point on Macs, and that's the only thing that I really miss on the Windows ecosystem, which is like optimization of the programs for the hardware. And you can see that with the same is with the iPhones and the iPads, with iOS and the Android ecosystem, because with the iPads you have how many models, like 4 every years maybe, but they still they have the same CPU, they have the same thing, just the capacity. So let's say that they have one single iPad new every year, and they need to optimize the iOS system for one device every year. Instead, Android, the optimization is decentered from Google to the different manufacturers. So Samsung, LG, and every one of them. So that's the problem. And you kind of see the pattern here. With Windows, you have a lot of brands of PCs, but Windows is only one big system. And that's why it's taking so much to optimize, because it's Windows works on everything. Like you can throw it on Windows 10, you can throw it on a 12 years old desktop that was in your garage, or something, and it works. Exactly. But that comes with the catch. So yeah, that's why for me Macs are the best at doing these 4 or 5 things that I pretty much optimized for the use, like Final Cut, like iMovie, like even Logic Pro. But when it comes to Adobe Premiere, for example, I don't know if it runs better on Mac than on PC, because it's not made by Apple on Apple machines.
No, that's true. That's true. I think it runs well enough, but I don't think there's any advantage. So if you're using like the Adobe suite mainly, and I'm not sure if a Mac would be would necessarily be that necessary. Not necessary. I would be really beneficial. So it depends on what you're using. But to me, like the Mac has a really good value in terms of longevity. And like I said, this optimization really helps use, like you can use a 2012 Mac like with an i5 processor, which like on paper is really weak at this point. And when you see the benchmarks, it's like really weak. But when you start working with this, you'd be surprised how many tracks you can do in Ableton and how many VSTs. Obviously, not that many, but you'd be surprised how productive this machine is. So I think the longevity is one factor holding down their value, because like they're not getting. They're not diminishing in price a lot. Like they retain their value pretty well, which again I always buy secondhand, because like a new one is always out of my budget, like 2,000-3,000 euros. That's crazy money.
I mean, right now 3,000 is the base model. I saw the MacBook Pros, the new ones, and yeah, they're pretty expensive.
Yeah, but
that's the
yeah, you go ahead.
No, I think the value holds up because they are so expensive, and plus they're made with materials which are really high standards. So if you think about that, I'm really into PCs and motherboards and everything that's concerning about hardware, PCs. So if you see like a motherboard from a MacBook Pro, everything it's optimized to be where it is. Instead, most of the times the PC manufacturers just take something that, like for example, you have an MSI, which is a brand of, and they might use an Asus motherboard, but Macs doesn't work in that way. They just construct their own motherboards for that specific model, and there's a big plus because it's really optimized as usual. But then if you need to change something, you're screwed, and you need to change everything.
Totally, and they went in this direction more and more in recent years, like the 2012 Macs, the Mac Pros, the Mac Mini, even the iMac before 2012 though, they were really easy to open and to upgrade, to swap components. I mean, with the iMac you can even upgrade the GPU, the CPU, like you can
I remember.
And now they've gone in a direction I personally don't really approve. And like they've really, I mean, it's crazy, man. Like with the 2016 to 2020 MacBook Pros, the ones that are only USB-C, that don't have the regular USB port. Dude, like the SSD is soldered to the motherboard, man. Like this is, I mean, okay, I understand soldering the RAM, although, I mean, obviously for the reason to make it thinner, but the SSD, man, like if you need to extract your info, if it dies, man. That's crazy. Like you can't, I mean, that's kind
but that's what Apple wants. They want you to be inside the ecosystem for as long as your life, so it's really difficult to escape.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that they really smart, because if you own a MacBook and you own an iPhone, then you have a lot of, airdrops and all of the thing that makes your life easier, but make you a slave of Apple at the same time. So, you might think, if you want so many easy routes, or you want to do it the hard way and, do it by yourself, and I think it's the big debate, like Mac versus PC is not about hardware, software, everything. It's like if you want to have control over your machine and you have time to learn your machine and how it works, or you just want something that works and you don't want to deal with anything.
Exactly. I think it's a really good point. I think it all I mean, there are a lot of variables, but it all boils down to whether you're a person who knows what they're doing.
You need to like it. Like if you don't like it, you're not gonna do that. I do it with passion, I love looking up a new hardware, like new CPUs, and I always do that inside. I do two things, learn about VSTs and learn about new hardware, in the PC. So
no, but that's really beneficial because most people have no idea, and Windows still. I mean, I know it contains most of the drivers as opposed to maybe 10 years ago, but I think there still can be a like an issue where it doesn't contain the driver of the piece of the hardware that's contained in your computer. And with the
but it's the same with Mac. Like
but with now
Mac,
with there are no drivers on Mac in terms of the built-in devices on Mac. Like when you install Mac OS, is done. Everything works. You need to install drivers maybe for your audio interface.
Oh yeah. No. On Windows, you have all the standard drivers for everything. Actually, right now, and if you don't have the driver for Windows 10, you can actually install the driver in compatibility mode.
Yeah,
and
sure.
The driver from Windows XP if you need that. But obviously, if you look at Macs and you have like a device from 20 years ago, they're not gonna work anyways.
Yeah, that's
either on Mac than PC.
That's correct. I was just pointing out that with the Mac, you just install Mac OS and everything works. Like it's there's no because it's pretty much what you said a moment ago. They have a fairly limited specter of machines that they need to support, and with Windows and Android, dude, I think they don't know every manufacturer that makes Windows machine or Android
exactly
phones. Like you mentioned Samsung and MSI and Dell and whatever, but dude, like they're hundreds of companies.
Yeah, even Xiaomi or something. They have their own laptop, which is pretty powerful actually.
But it's like a pretty well-known company at this point. I'm saying there's so many Chinese companies. There's no There are endless amount of companies. So this is
but I think the old Macs cannot install the latest version of Mac OS, right? Like they're less limited at some point.
They are limited, but it's really easy to patch them actually and install the newer version on an older unsupported machine.
I read that, which is like basically installing a Hackintosh.
No, it's not that. It's not that difficult, and it's not that. I think it's just a patching tool, and it works. So the Hackintosh is another can of worms. I'm not really familiar with this, but to me,
I had a Hackintosh.
Did you?
Yeah.
To me, the Hackintosh.
My old laptop was a Hackintosh. It's not that difficult, but the problem is that the driver, which on Macs, is not true that they don't exist. They call differently. They call DDU or some. No, I don't remember the name, but it's they like a lower in a lower. They're more close to the machine basically and the hardware than they are on Windows. They have another layer of programming over them. So that means they're more optimized basically.
No, man, I didn't mean they don't exist. I just meant that to run the devices that are on your computer, everything is included in Mac OS. I'm not saying they don't have drivers. It's just you don't encounter the need to install drivers. And another big like in terms of raw performance, obviously if you're looking for raw performance, like you can never beat a PC, but I think people exaggerate a bit when they say, oh, I can buy a cheap PC and it's the same as the Mac because like you said, the high quality components, like it's not just the CPU, it's the power supply, it's the motherboard. Like when you have higher quality components, you can expect a really stable PC which will run music production software much more in a much more efficient manner.
I would say everything under €1,000 from the PC world not worth your time,
Exactly. So I think they're definitely cheaper in terms of comparing them in terms of performance, but they're not that cheap, man. Like you can't buy the cheapest I don't know, €300 laptop and expect it to be
No, yeah.
in the same league as a MacBook. That's
No. That's wrong. No, but I think that if you look into really high-end PCs, the price of the PCs versus Mac is not that different. Like if you see a Razer or the really highest high-end like XPS, the 15 inches, the Dell XPS, they cost like a Mac, like €3,000, like easy.
Yeah, totally. That's what I always tell people. Like when you compare Mac to PC, you need to compare it to the high-end PC laptops and to the brand name computers. Like, 'cause if you build it on your own, it's obviously always gonna be cheaper. But compare it to a brand name PC like Lenovo or a Dell or a Razer, like you said, they're really.
We're talking about laptops now, right? Because if we talk about desktop, that's a whole other story.
I'm talking mostly about laptops, but there's another thing, and also I think we need to mention Razer because they're getting really popular. But let me just say that the iMac actually is a really good deal. Like people say this blanket statement that Macs are really much more expensive, and there's the Mac tax, the Mac tax that makes like this inexplicable margin they add to the cost of the computer. But in terms of like the iMac, like a computer with these specs and a 5K display, like just look it up. It's not cheaper if you go the Windows route. Like so,
And
I think
they actually tried it, and it was not cheap than the iMac. They built the same PC with the same components and the same display, and it was exactly the same price.
Exactly like in 2015 when they released the 5K iMac. Like actually the only 5K, like you could buy a 5K just the 5K display costed as much as the iMac. So
exactly.
So I think people need to differentiate a bit, and the iMac is a really great value in my.
I think the most underlooked and probably if someone is pointing me a gun and say you need to have a Mac, the one that I'm gonna buy is the Mac Mini, the box. That's the cheapest, and it has the CPU like the iMac, and it has a RAM, and it's upgradable. And if you already have a monitor, and let's face it, like you are a music producer, you don't need a Retina display.
No, you don't really need it. Yeah,
right. You're not doing graphics, like you don't need sRGB display with the most accurate colors. You just using your DAW and making music. If we're talking just only about music, obviously it's important having a good screen, but I think a 5K Retina display is overkilled for a music producer most of the time.
Yeah.
And, I think the best bang for the buck is the Mac Mini. And the new one is pretty good actually.
Yeah, it's a great value, and but there's like it depends on what kind of. Let me just tell you from experience, like it depends on what kind of display you have hooked into it. Like with my MacBook Pro, and it's really hard to find this information on the internet, so people might be interested to learn that the MacBook Pro Retina display, at least mine from the 2015 with the built-in GPU, like it has the Intel GPU, no added what was it called?
Yeah, discrete GPU.
Yeah, and it performs better when I'm running it with my 1080p external display than when I'm using the built-in Retina display, because with the Retina display it has to push more pixels and it actually messes up the Ableton performance. I can do a test and show you, like I can get a certain really low buffer without clicks and pops and a lot of VSTs and stuff when I'm using the 20 when I'm using the 1080p display, and with the Retina display the same project starts to pop and click, and I thought it was a bug, and then I realized that it's just the GPU needing to push out more pixels. And if you hook up a 4K display to this machine,
it's even worse.
it's probably going to be even worse. And I've read some other people complain about this even on the newer Mac Minis. They don't have a discrete GPU. They have only an Intel GPU. And if you connect a 4K display, your Ableton session, I mean, it's fine, but it's not as good as you would expect. That's what I'm saying. Because in terms of the benchmarks, especially the i7 is super powerful. Like it's like a space. It's a rocket. It's like crazy powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people would be really surprised that graphics play into the music production thing a bit. But I think they do. The Intel graphics on a Mac with a high resolution display, they can increase your buffer size if you don't want pops and clicks. So this is, and there's very
it's true actually. Like that's how the iGPU works, and even only with the heat, with the that you cannot like graphic cards obviously takes a lot more of by design, they are really hot, and you need to dissipate them. So you have like you have a really small graphic card inside your CPU, and if you need to dissipate that component of over the CPU, you obviously cannot get the same performance, because that's another big topic, like ventilation. And I think the Mac with the unibody, they doing a really good job. Not all of them, because they have bugs, and they put, sometimes for the design they really compromise the airflow, and I hate when they do that, just for doing half a millimeter.
That's true, man. That's true. That's true. Like in the so many people have complained about this. Like especially if you're doing video or music production or sound intensive work, like you don't care like about a bit big 1 millimeter thinner. You don't really care about this. You're more, and it's supposed to be a pro machine, like especially the 15-inch. I mean, the 13-inch, it's pro. It's called pro, but a lot of people just buy it to have a nice computer. But
nice. I call them nice Facebook machines.
Actually, the 2020 version is crazy powerful too, man. Like
the 16 inches is pretty good, actually.
Even the 13-inch, man, it's 1.4 gigahertz, and it outperforms very powerful computers from the past few years. So
but that's because the new Intel 10 generation CPUs.
And we'll be talking.
I don't wanna discuss about these things because it's really, really long topic. But with the 10 gen, if you look at the U processor, there's an HQ.
I know.
Which is really, really powerful, and then there's a U processor, which is really light on battery and power. They usually line the U version is 15 watts, and the HQ version is like 45 or even 70 watts, or they have a pretty, and they usually inside the big window machine. When you see like these 17 inches gamers laptop, and they
super
mount
ugly, man. Like let me just. They're super ugly. I don't know.
That's true. That's I cannot debate about that. There's gamers like them. Obviously, they're red and they have big colors, and it's cool. But I hate them. Like they're really bad looking most of the time. I would still buy them because I'm pretty.
You don't care.
No. For me, like it's if he has a really good performance, I don't care about the look of the PC. But still, they're heavy and the battery is pretty bad. But now with the U CPU, the new 10 gen, because basically my PC is a 10 gen U processor, and it's 6-core U processor. So it takes up, when it's idle, I can take as low as 4 watts.
So is it an i5 or i7?
It's an i7. Yeah, it's an i7.
Okay.
But the i7, i3, it's just a really mean number. It doesn't mean anything at this point. In the past it was, but right now, if you see i9, like maybe there's a 4-core i9 which can be outperformed by a 6-core i7. So it's you just look at the raw performance and the core number. That's the most important thing.
Right, yeah. And
The best thing is that this thing can run on battery for 10 hours, but if you push that, it can go as high as an HQ processor. So if you need the juice, you can have it. If you don't need it and you're on battery and you're doing awards, documents, or light gaming or anything else, really, that's not really that you don't need the full raw performance. You can just undervolt it, and it just runs on 4 or 5 volts, and the battery is really long, and it it has like a 70 watts like PSU. So with the new, I'm really looking forward into the new Macs and new PC with this new generation. I'm really liking it. This was the first model actually that came out with this new CPU that wasn't as ugly as the 7-inch, big thing. And it's great. I think this PC right now is the best bang for the buck. It's $1,500 or even euros.
what's the exact model?
MSI Prestige 15.
Okay, I think people would be interested, like, because there's so many PC laptops, man, and for people it's hard to figure out which one. So it's a really good recommendation. That
I mean, I have it, so exactly. I recommend it for
exactly
for that reason.
For a tech savvy person to recommend it, I think it's a really
and basically it has a discrete GPU, so you can run this big loop. You can run Ableton with the external GPU like the NVIDIA, so it doesn't taxes your CPU whatsoever. And I don't know if you have a way of deciding the which one is doing a specific program on the Mac PC, on the Mac computer.
If you have a discrete GPU inside the Mac, you can specify to always use that. I think it's possible. It's an option in the operating system, but I don't have a Mac.
Oh yeah, right.
So there's no such an option. But I think it's because people wouldn't expect that graphic performance has anything to do with music production, but it turns out it kind of does if you have a high res monitor, especially. And
exactly.
With Razer, I see that also I've read a lot about them on Create Digital Music. They recommend them a lot, like Mac Alternative, which looks really good. I mean, the design of their laptops is really, it's a gaming laptop, but it's not like offensive to my eyes like regular laptops are.
It's green, not red.
Yeah, it's
at least
it's sleek, it's thin, it has a trackpad. But again, like maybe people can look up the article on Create Digital Music. There were again some people complaining in the comments that they bought it and they didn't really get they had issues with it. So, but in terms of pricing, I think they're cheaper than the equivalent MacBook Pro. Like they have everything the high-end MacBook Pro has, but
I would still recommend, like I think Razer is one of the. I think Razer is Dell actually too. It's the gaming department of Dell.
Is it? Didn't know that. I don't know.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I know Razer it's owned by another company which makes normal computers, and I think the XPS 15. The Razer and the Lenovo, the X1, are the best Windows machines for making music if you can afford them, because they're pretty expensive.
So yeah, it's a great recommendation for people who are watching this and are really want to go the PC way and don't want to sell their kidney for a Mac, But yeah, I mean, you mentioned the processors. Like, didn't you heard the news though? The Apple are going with their own processor. The reason for this is, it turns out that they're being held back by Intel processors in terms of performance, in terms of heat, and now that they've announced that they'll be putting their own processors inside the Macs, they're expected to have a really huge jump in performance. And it's not really hard to imagine that, because when you have a look at the iPad Pro, which basically has the ARM processor without any cooling whatsoever. Like imagine a newer version of this processor with cooling. What performance you can expect? I think it would be blazing powerful. It would be.
I think if they do it right and they have the right amount of money, because imagine like Intel and AMD, they only doing CPUs. It's really difficult, you know, to outperform an Intel CPU at this point. And AMD got stuck for years, but now they back on the, you know, they basically on at the same level. But I don't think the ARM processor can be, you know, that powerful. I think can be really, really smart. Like it can be efficient, but it's difficult. Like I cannot imagine like a MacBook in 1 year of development, you know, made like an Intel CPU. So maybe let's see.
I mean, you will see, man. They're expected to have even iMacs with this processor. So let's see. Like I've seen people predict that the performance is gonna be really, really huge. Of course, it's gonna be a huge mess for developers because now they're
as always.
Yeah, because they're not. I mean, the Intel machines are gonna be supported for a while, of course, because otherwise it would be crazy. But yeah, I think we'll see. We'll see how that works. But I think it's not a good time to buy a Mac right now because let's see what they announce in the autumn. Because even if you're buying it secondhand, obviously when a new generation comes in, even the second-hand market, the price.
Yeah, I haven't seen the renewed models. You know, they're pretty good actually. They're like new models. You know, when you send a MacBook to repair, you know, it's like a renewed MacBook. So yeah. I wouldn't care. You know, you even have warranty. So if you need to buy Macs, I think that's a really good way to, you know, buy one cheaper but still kind of new.
Exactly. Refurbished or second hand is really cool.
Anyways, I don't think because don't get me wrong, I don't think every Apple product is bad. So when I
can't get this from you.
Yeah. No, because I think about, you know, something really made in that something perfect. I think about the iPad, especially for musicians. So nobody could outperform an iPad, you know, as an alternative to a PC or a Mac. There's no Android device. There's no, you know, portable Windows machines with the ARM processor, you know, that can outperform an iPad. That's the most beautiful machine I think that Apple made. And, you know, obviously the iPhones are pretty good with cameras. I just think, you know, the MacBook are a bit overpriced when you think about raw performance. And I think Apple spent a lot of money out of the performance of the PC, and the fact, in fact, you know, they don't even put the models of the CPUs as a selling point of the Macs, you know. So you should start thinking about, you know, when you put a pro name over a machine, you know, I want to have control. That's my whole philosophy of why I don't want to have a Mac. That's the only thing, you know. It's a pro machine. I want to have control. Why don't you let me swap an SSD if I want more, you know, more capacity, or more? If I want to swap you know, on this PC I can add another NVMe, add another RAM. Even if I want, I can swap the CPU on a laptop.
No, like, I agree, and even diehard Apple fanboys agree with you. So I think you're absolutely correct. This is a big problem. The upgradability, the swapping of parts, the repair. But yeah, let's maybe discuss the performance, the audio interface performance, and the latency performance, and some optimizations. Because you said you wanted to show some tricks to optimize a Windows machine, but again, to be like devil's advocate, maybe again, on Macs you can plug.
You don't need that.
Yeah, you can plug pretty much like you just get an audio interface, whatever it is, you just plug it, it works. You're done. The latency is decent. Like I now have the, you know, I have the Moto M4, and it adds an additional driver to lower the latency, to make it even lower. but it doesn't mean that it works perfectly without this driver. While on PC, you need to have a good quality driver supplied by the manufacturer of the audio interface.
I mean, at this point with Windows 10, they got everyone basically got pretty good. It's really not that difficult to write drivers, and now they have Wasapi drivers, which Ableton at this point doesn't support. But I think that there's like co-audio, because I use Bitwig basically with Wasapi with my same audio interface, and the latency was like the ASIO latency, and as a native Windows driver.
All right, so the Wasapi driver is, like I said, man, I haven't used the Windows machine for a while, so I'm learning some.
They're doing something in the background. They basically Windows 10 is like, with Windows 7 Vista, and then they have the, how was it called? No, then there was the 10, right after Vista. So yeah, with the older Windows version, they just upgrade the whole operating system. Right now they build Windows 10 like big boxes, and they're updating one single boxes at the time. So they really made a lot of changes in the background with every like kind of big update. Like not right now there's the 2004 update, and it's really making some difference in my graphic card performance. So but they didn't touch the operating system, so that's another advantage. Ableton works just like the same that it was working on the previous Windows 10 version, and that's a big a big plus, because you can have the same programs that they just work.
That's great, man. So can you show like a couple of those essential? I mean, those Windows optimization guides, they're really long. There's really a lot of stuff, but let's have a look at the basics.
So yeah, first of all, like this recommendation is just for laptops, because on the PC, the desktops is usually already set in that way. But if you want to have the maximum performance with the new processor actually on Windows, you just need to go into sorry, it's in Italian obviously, but that's with the battery screen, and then you go into the how's it called in English? Suspension and power, probably.
Yeah, it's the power settings. Yeah,
power settings, exactly. Yeah. So then you have all the power, like the preset, power presets. I don't know how they call it, and you can modify them. And here you have the advanced thing, and that's worth looking at. The only one that I suggest changing is there's an option called
Let me just explain it for people, because maybe they won't understand it in Italian. But what you're trying to set now is basically the minimum power of the processor, because
exactly.
When battery, the processor will decrease the load and to save battery.
But really quickly, like how a CPU works is that the Windows can tell the CPU if he needs processing power or not. The big problem with Ableton is that he doesn't. I'm talking especially with Live, because I use that. I don't know about all the programs. That's pretty much the same with all the programs, in Windows, and they so light on the CPU, because that's what is taxed as the audio buffer, basically, that they don't request enough power to the processor, so the processor doesn't run on 100%, because the computer thinks it doesn't need that, So then you can say at the PC, when you on the AC, so you're connecting on the outlet, you can say, just put the processor 100% every time.
Exactly. So the minimum power should be 100%. So you shouldn't allow it to ever decrease the frequency and decrease the performance, because like in an DAW, as soon as the DAW needs that extra power, it needed like right
Instantly.
now.
Yeah.
Like you can't wait even a millisecond to increase the performance, and you already got the pops and clicks by this point. And
Perfect. Yeah.
for a lot of people that I teach that use the Windows laptops, this is the biggest. Like they don't know this. They have it set to have the process
Yeah. 5%. Yeah.
frequency, and I mean, if it is the first thing people need to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. The first thing, if you want to do something useful for your devices, is Windows detects if the USB peripherals are not used, and they just cut them, to reduce CPU use. But then if you use a USB audio card and you idle for like 1 or 2 minutes, so you just maybe playing with your instrument, and then you go back to your PC and maybe it's switched off, and then it takes time and maybe mess up with live, it doesn't recognize instantly. So that's not a problem right now in that time, but it's worth disabling, because obviously if you're using your PC for music production, you are using your PC 100%. You're on live, you don't need to set anything to idle, you're using everything that's connected.
Exactly. So the first thing is the minimum processor performance. The next thing was the suspension of USB devices when they're idle. Okay.
Exactly.
Anything else you want to show us?
So yeah, that's basically it for the raw CPU performance and for Ableton. If you want to go advanced, I recommend you looking into some undervolt and overclock programs, like this thing, which is called throttle stop, which can actually unlock your processor, so you can do whatever you want with that. And in my case, just because my PC is my CPU is new, so it has like the speed shift instead of Windows taking care of when it needs the processor. So it's a new technology from Intel basically, and it's you can set the speed shift in lower values and just set the processor. I need the power most of the times, So the CPU is gonna give it to you, not Windows. So Windows is not in control anymore. That's the beauty of the new CPUs. So that's why I told you the Windows ecosystem is really developing really fast for music production, because you have all of these really interesting things. And as you can see, the speed shift is set to 64, which is a low number. You can go as high as 1,000. And if you see that, my CPU, I am right now in the 1 and at 1 gigahertz basically. So it's really idle. That's what I told you, about this PC. It can go really low, and if you see that it's taking up like 5 volts or something, but that thing can go up to 45 watts if it needs that.
That's great, man. No, I mean, I really see that things have come a long way. Not from like when I used to use Windows computers, they were fine. Again, if you know what you're doing, you could get a really decent PC. But I'm happy that there are some developments in this area, because Apple has actually gone backwards. Their computers now, like they've had the issues with the T2 security chip, which made your USB audio interface glitch, which is I mean, people were really surprised, because I mean, you buy the Mac because exactly because these things don't happen, because they work perfectly. So it was a really annoying problem. But let me just ask you about something else in terms of Windows performance. Do you know about this DPC latency? Like this, you can download this piece of software which is called DPC latency checker.
That's not working anymore in Windows 10.
It's old news, right? I suspected that it might be old news, but let me just explain what it's all about for people who don't know. I can
show you. Do you have the Windows? PC, so I can show it to you.
Yes.
Actually, the same thing as DPC latency now is called latency mon.
Now that's great. Let me just explain for the viewers and the listeners so that they know what it's all about. Basically, on Windows, you can have some devices that are in your system, like your Wi-Fi card, maybe your GPU or some other device that's inside the computer. Their drivers can interfere with audio performance, and it was basically an application which shows a graph letting you know if you can expect such problems with such interferences. And obviously, if it was all green, you shouldn't be having any pops and clicks. And if it went into the red, it was bad. But that was like a while ago. So now
it was with Windows 7 actually, and that it's pretty much the same. A bit different because now you have this program which is called Latency Mon, which shows exactly what driver is causing the issue, so you can solve it, obviously. So yeah, you can just run it for a bit of time. Obviously, right now I'm running on batteries, so there's gonna be higher DPC spike because the
and
battery.
you're also sharing your screen, man. Like it puts a bit of a load on the.
Exactly.
But I think it's still. It seems to be having difficulty handling, but yeah, I think this is because of the Zoom screen sharing.
No. I just that's the thing. I told my PC to just go into low power setting just for doing the code without the AC. But if I run the thing again with the AC and with the higher profile, it's only interrupting when it needs some. In my case, the only bad thing is the battery management. So this thing is calling my batteries, and it's actually saying, "Oh, what's the percentage?" And then the PC is telling the percentage of batteries. So if you disabled how much battery you have, basically, it's solved. But it doesn't interfere with Ableton actually. So that's the big thing. I don't care at this point. When you did everything, it just works.
Exactly, man. So long story short, for people who are watching and listening, if you're having problems with your Windows computer, like you're getting pops and clicks, inexplicable pops and clicks, like maybe you've increased your buffer and you have everything running at full speed, you don't have viruses and stuff and some malware and stuff, but you're still getting those pops and clicks, I will advise people to look into this and download what was called Latency Monitor.
Latency Monitor is a free program, and then you can obviously just search for any driver that's causing really high DPC spikes.
Absolutely. So I think.
I think in a laptop, the first thing you need to see is the video card, because it's always interrupting the system and switching between the discrete and the integrated.
Right.
So the CPU and the NVIDIA.
But it seems like these problems have really been not solved 100%, but they're more rare now, because like 7 or 8 years ago, especially with Dell computers, they were like really notorious for their drivers causing, like even if you had the i7 or some really powerful CPU, like pops and clicks, and people were like, but I bought the most expensive computer, why doesn't it perform so well? And that's why a lot of people went to Macs, to Apple at this point. But now that like you showed, there have been some development in this area. I think Windows laptops are really worth looking into, even for diehard Mac enthusiasts, because Apple have gone, like I said, they've done some stupid stuff in the recent years. So I mean, I'm not a Mac fanboy. I still prefer to use a Mac, but the Windows PC is starting to get really good, so it's a really good.
I think the only thing that other than obviously the raw performance for dollars is just the amount of software that you have for Windows that is higher than Macs. They obviously can have bugs and everything, but I have a lot of VST that doesn't exist on Macs, and they're really, really interesting, especially if you use a bridge and you have really old, 32 bits, like the Verity. I don't know if you know the Verity of Sound, VOS VSTs.
I've heard of them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they like on par of plugin Alliance and Softtubes, and they're free, but they only 32 bits for Windows. So,
Right.
and I would never switch, only for those plugins because they're amazing.
Right, right,
You
right.
know,
Now,
so
man,
that's another thing.
absolutely, man. These are really, really great reasons, and of course, man, everyone needs to make up their mind and whatever works for you. I'm not saying like the only thing I can say for sure is that, like you mentioned, the iPad is miles ahead of anything else in terms of the mobile devices. Like it's not even a conversation. Like you see, developers are not really making like. But Steinberg made Cubasis for Android. They released it.
Yeah, yeah. I saw Cubasis and the Koala app. I don't know if you
Yeah,
know. It's
yeah,
like the
yeah. So
SP4 replacement.
yeah, exactly. It's a dope app, man. Like I've been wanting to get
But
into.
the latency on Android is
Exactly, man. Exactly. People think it's oh, you're Apple fanboys. No, man. It's just developers are saying it doesn't really work that well. So that's why the iPad is, and the iPad is basically the only tablet that is really successful. Like all the other tablets are not really.
if you buy an iPad Pro, you can use it, for your main PC actually in your studio. You just buy a really high over the iPad, but it's it's powerful. It's really sleek. You can touch it. It's really cool. You have a lot of playable synthesizer that cannot be played in the same way. In a normal PC without touchscreen or even a Mac. So I think if you, I don't know for 2020 or even 2021, but I really think in the future we're gonna see a lot of producers right in the iPads, ecosystem because that's amazing.
Exactly, man. And people think it's a luxury. It's not even that much of a luxury, actually, in terms of what you're getting for the money, in terms of how much the apps cost. Like maybe maybe it's a luxury if you're just browsing the social media, but for a music producer, it's actually a really good value when you consider how much the alternatives cost. So yeah, I think it's a great platform.
And
And
it's portable
yeah, it's
and
portable.
it lasts a long time with the battery. So
Exactly, exactly. Portable, powerful, and now with the new Mac OS and the new ARM processors that they're getting ready to introduce, you'll be able to run iPad apps natively on the Mac. Because so they're probably going to be a bit of a merging of the platforms.
who knows if it's gonna be the way around too. I'm really looking forward for that.
Exactly, man. Because people have been asking why can't I run Ableton on my iPads, and I think it's
Yeah.
really really interesting. But yeah, man. I think it was a dope conversation. I think people will learn a lot from what we've been talking about, the Mac and the PC debate, and
I mean, yeah, it's a really long topic to explain, especially if you want to optimize Windows. It's gonna be really difficult if you are a beginner. So yeah, maybe look into online. There's a lot of resources online. Maybe down of the line, and as we were talking, I'm gonna do a tutorial on that. But yeah, it's doable. In 2020, it is doable making music on a Windows laptop that doesn't cost too much. If you cannot afford the Mac, you can do that. If you could afford the Mac and you like the ecosystem, just go for it. It's an amazing machine and it's built like a tank. So that's a big plus.
I think it's a great, like these are great words to wrap up our conversation, and really balanced advice. So we were not like fighting Mac is better, PC is better. We were like really balanced. So I think people will.
That's pro and cons.
Exactly, man. Exactly. No need to be the fighting and stating which is superior and whatever. And so yeah, man. I think we can wrap it up with this and. Like July the 17th, your new EP, right?
No, a new song, yeah, with Burger.
Okay, it's a song, right?
It's called Would You.
How?
I can say the title. Would You.
Dope, man, dope. And we'll do another podcast after the release and we'll talk about it more. And until then, man, take care and
Thank you for having me, man. It's always a pleasure.